always been writing, but I always wrote poetry. I had never actually written much prose at all until I wrote Smashed. But I sort of, when I was 23 and quitting drinking, became really preoccupied with this old memory I hadn't thought about in ages, which was this night I had my stomach pumped when I was 16. And when I sat down to write about it, it came out as prose. And became later that chapter in Smashed. I really spilled Smashed. Like, I wrote it in 4 months, just like morning, noon, and night. There were days when I didn't leave my apartment at all and didn't collect the mail, and the snow just accumulated outside my window. But yeah, it really poured out of me, and I was, writing sentences in my dreams. And this new one, by comparison, it took like 4 years instead of 4 months. I felt just like 14 years old again when I quit drinking. Just no idea how to interact with people without alcohol, no idea how to bond with them, and of course no idea how to really emote. So to suddenly have to talk about these really personal things that I'd written, sometimes under the bright lights of a TV crew on me, it was kind of horrifying. I've always felt like there's like a shorter distance between my brain and my typing fingers than between my brain and my mouth sometimes. And I think I'm much more likely to get really inhibited in person as opposed to on the page, which was exactly the thing I had to confront when I was writing Fury. When I started writing it, I thought it was going to be this journalistic book of essays about how Americans feel about anger and what their remedies for it was. And once I realized, of course, it's probably obvious to anyone else, that I'd glommed onto the topic because I was so uncomfortable with anger myself, and because I had such a backlog that went back to my childhood, I was terrified to really reveal that to a reader and put it on the page. I didn't know if I'd be able to maintain their empathy. Because I was so far behind and I got really caught up in my research, and at the beginning of writing Fury, I didn't want to admit that I was writing about anger because I was angry. I got really far behind, and so I ended up, when I decided to turn it into a memoir, almost writing it as I was living it. So it really became a book within a book, almost like the movie adaptation. And but I let it stay that way in the end, because I realized my defense mechanisms in life by realizing the defense mechanisms I used in the book, which is like occasionally when things got too emotional in my life, I would step back, get really academic, get really scholarly, pull out the facts and statistics and go to the experts as a way to letting anyone, prevent them from seeing who I really was, which is an emotional, flawed human being. And so I begin the book doing that, and halfway through I sort of have to step back and drop that shield and really let people in. It became very clear once I sort of tapped into my anger that the source of it was in my family, and I knew I was going to have to reveal why I was angry at them and let it all out, and then hopefully, I do later then come to find a lot more compassion and forgiveness, and sort of understand that just in the way that I had always felt like they denied my emotions, I did the same thing to them. I was not a captive audience when they were angry and upset and depressed. But yeah, it was very difficult. I showed them this book as soon as I had a draft. Smashed, I showed it to them much further down in the process, and I really wanted them to feel like they could talk to me about it, about their feelings about it, that they could vet it and tell me if I'd remembered anything incorrectly. But it was still tough. I think our relationship was already on really, it was in a bad place long before I finished this book or wrote it. And so, we're still rebuilding, but the past few years have been hard. I think you have to really live in denial, write it as if it's for yourself. If there's something that is much too personal, too much of an overshare and not crucial to the story, you can always strike it out later in subsequent drafts. If you have a real problem where you think a family problem, say, you can always choose a pen name later if that helps. I think to just be as honest as you can. You can always go back and tone it down if you need to, but also to always be harder on yourself than you are on anyone else. You really don't want your reader to know anything about you as a memoirist that you're not aware of yourself. So it requires a lot of writing the scene, but then stepping back, making sense of it, being really self-reflective.